Hey, everybody, welcome to another episode of Fix My Fatigue. I am your host, Brian Crawley, and today I have with me Mr. Preston Gorman. And I'm very excited to have him on the show today. We have some great chats. He's actually a kind of previous practice client. He was kind and gracious enough to do some things that I recommended. We actually met back at the beginning of my journey when I was still working at a vitamin IV clinic that will not be named. We met and we were both trying to figure it out, and we were both in the same boat. We had a lot of crossover, and immediately we were like, "All right, we can figure this out." And one of the things that brought us together was this: I'm a registered nurse and Preston is a physician's assistant. So for a long time, we've gone through a lot of the same stuff. We've seen a lot of the same stuff in the medical system. And this really tightened the bond between us where we have a common ground. We're like, okay, this is clearly not working. And there's clearly, there's a time and place, but let's explore other options because there's plenty that's not working. So, with that being said, Preston, why don't you just tell us a little bit about yourself, how you got started, and where you've ended up?
So yeah, I'm Preston. I'm actually a physician assistant by training. I was trained in obviously the conventional medical model in a sort of a mainstream PA school here in the States. Practiced conventionally for a number of years. Then COVID kind of soured me, so to speak, because I saw how ridiculous it all was. And I faced a lot of my own health struggles that medicine had no answers for.
Mm.
So to give you maybe an overview of my journey, um, I met Brian. When was it? Was it 2022? Maybe?
Oh, dude, yeah, that had to be about 2022, 2023.
I think so because it was either summer or fall of 22 as I was kind of getting close to the end of my time at my job there. And I think same for you. Um,
Hmm.
yeah, we've kind of been on a journey ever since. So are you sorry, Brian, you want me to talk about my health journey or what do you want me to talk about?
Yeah, whatever you feel called to talk about. I think talking about how you progressed from um, the modern medical way of thinking to seeking alternatives and your journey throughout that. I think what people need to, what I want to lay a groundwork of, like, both Preston and I have tried a lot of stuff,
A
like
lot,
in
a lot.
all field, a lot. So I want to hear about that. And then just whatever kind of pops up between us, and I'll jump in and we'll just have a conversation. So
Okay. So what I'll do, let me give a brief background of my career and my career evolvement because that actually ties in, and then I'll talk about my own personal health. So,
beautiful.
like I said, I was trained in the conventional model as a PA. I've practiced in a lot of settings, primarily general practice settings. I've done family practice, I've done urgent care, I've done emergency room. Most of those primarily, um, and I would say the bulk of it was in urgent care. And I had, my own personal critical illness, almost a decade ago, very critical illness. I was in the ICU. I'm not gonna get into the details of that, but suffice to say that I came out of that with some health struggles that just lingered for a number of years. Fatigue being probably the primary one. Um, and no doctors had any answers. They tried, a few different drugs, but for the most part, after my ICU stay, they were like, "Well, your illness is gone, so you should be fine. I don't know what your problem is. Get on your way." I mean, that's not they didn't say it in that way, but that's kind of what they were saying. Okay.
Mm.
And I didn't
Mhm.
realize my body had taken such a hit. My adrenal glands probably took a hit because they were in survival mode for so long during my hospitals. I was in the hospital for about a month. And so my body just took a major hit emotionally, spiritually, physically. Right. Um, and the medical system doesn't see those. It only sees like symptoms and lab values. And my values were basically normal, give or take. So if they my so I began to like have some struggles with the medical system at that time, but I hadn't put all the pieces together. I still was practicing, I still was doing the thing, and I actually internalized their disdain. I internalized their message. Well, it must be I must be mental, or I don't know. We'll just get over it and not worry about it. I internalized a lot of that shame actually. Then I think that they kind of peeped on me because they had no answers. Fast forward to 2020, COVID. Um, I'm watching the whole world shut down. I'm watching them force vaccines on people. And I don't even know how I knew this. I just knew in those first few months of COVID, I was like, something's not right. And I just knew. I mean, it was almost like a spiritual thing. Like, this something doesn't feel right about this. Then I began doing my research and came to the conclusion I'm never getting that vaccine. That's never going to my body. That thing's bad news. mRNA, all I was out. It's all,
Same thing.
yeah. And
Same thing happened to me.
okay. I mean, I almost think it was like God, like telling me or warning me or something.
100%.
And so, cause like my inner person, like something deep inside me was just like, like everybody else was going along with it. And they're just like, well, yeah, we got to put a mask on and we got a and I'm like, what, why? Like it's a virus and it's not as deadly as there. I was also looking at the numbers, the real, mortality numbers, and they actually weren't that high. They were less than 1%. So they were saying this is a pandemic. And I'm like, no, no, no. Pandemic is when like 50% of people are dying,
Mhm.
not less than 1% of the actual cases.
Right.
So that got me asking a lot more questions. My own health issues were still ongoing. Those were still in the background. But now I had some objective external things going on to go, wait, this is all wacky. Um, and so then I started doing a whole lot of research and into vaccines. And I'll be honest with you guys, 10 years ago, I was the guy who made fun of anti-vaxxers. Now I am the anti-vaxxer. I'm the guy
Yep.
I was making fun of. Okay. That's how far I've shifted. And then I learned about the origins of our medical system, the Rockefellers that kind of started all that in the early 1900s. Um, I realized all I was taught in school was to diagnose and to give a pill. And the diagnosing was just putting a name on something. It wasn't finding what was really going on. Okay.
Right.
It gave names to collection of symptoms and then I'd prescribe a drug. That's what I was trained to do.
Mhm.
I was not trained to heal. No one trained me to heal.
Right.
So, so as COVID evolved, as I did more research, I became very disillusioned. And to this day, I have a little bit of a grief process going on of like, how did I spend so many years doing that nonsense? I mean, there's like a, I don't know, spiritual grief, I guess. Of like, man, I can't believe it's like I was the apostle Paul killing Christians or something. It's kind of like that, you know? And I feel bad about it, you know? So, and as I was discovering all these things and coming to these conclusions and watching my colleagues, the doctors I was working with, the nurses, they're giving the shot to everybody. They're not asking any questions. They're going along with every protocol and not questioning a thing. And I was like, this is bizarre. Isn't this the scientific community? Like, isn't this the people that ask questions and they're not asking any questions? Like, if the CD says it, then it's gospel. And if Dr. Fauci says it, it's gospel. And I was like, this is weird. This is
Oh, yeah.
right. I mean, you were probably dealing with the same stuff as a nurse.
Oh, 100%. I mean, I was on the front lines, right? And I traveled around to multiple different states. So I saw what was happening and my mind had already been opened up to this kind of alternative stuff, but just like you, I was making fun of anti-vaxxers to a certain extent, although there was some element of resistance in my mind. I was like, I don't know, something doesn't sit right, but I can't quite put my finger on it. So I'm not like fully anti-vax, but I'm also not like gung ho vax. So COVID rolled around, and just like you said, things just kind of hit the fan. Everybody was freaking out, and it was all this fear-based decision making. Um, I mean, can you even call it decision making? It was just a bunch of fear. Like
It's reaction.
everybody and granted, at the very start, we had no idea what we were dealing with. So yeah, I was obviously protecting myself going into rooms and stuff and putting on all the gear and all the PPE, but as I moved around and just continued to have my mind open And I had that, what you're talking about, that like God-given discernment of like something is off, right? Like something is not right with all of this. There's a very dark energy to it. But I didn't know. I was very conflicted because I'm a nurse. I'm out there working with these people. I saw many people die. So now, what is my responsibility? Is my responsibility to push the common narrative as a nurse because of what I've seen? So I was really conflicted between kind of that mainstream way of thinking and sense of maybe duty, right? And also observing that I didn't see a single healthy person in the ICU.
Mm.
Not a single one across every single state I worked in. Texas, Utah, California, Colorado. Those were all the states I worked in and was in and around during that period of the pandemic. There was not a single metabolically healthy person. Everybody was a type 2 diabetic,
Mhm.
asthma, COPD, congestive heart failure, coronary artery disease. So they had all of these pre-existing conditions that wreak havoc on your metabolic health. And then you throw in a virus that also wreaks havoc. A virus, like, do we even really know? Like, I'm open to the idea that it could have been something else. Like, that's where I'm at now, where I'm just like, do we really know anything? And everybody is lying to us. That's certainly what it seems like. So, yeah, right there with you with the not really knowing exactly what was happening, but having that dark sense, and also seeing and observing that people who were unhealthy were not doing well. It seemed very clear. And it seemed like no one else could see that. Like there was actually a nurse practitioner who I remember she was looking at a patient's chart and with visible confusion, and she was just like, I don't understand. This patient is healthy. Why is he doing so poorly? And this was a young man. This was young 20s. And I look in the room and he's well over 300 pounds. And she says that he's healthy, meaning
No.
that he doesn't have a health history.
Oh,
So
yeah.
that that right there is the mindset of 95% of doctors and nurse practitioners, advanced practice professionals. If they don't have a medical history, they're healthy, which is complete
Oh, it
nonsense
is
and
nonsense.
doesn't even,
And
yeah,
I used to think that way. Earlier in my practice, if they didn't have any medical history, well, then they were healthy. Nope. Wrong answer. Wrong answer.
yep. And something I've been thinking about recently is just, you know, being not being afraid to speak out and say what needs to be said and ask questions. And it's like people don't understand that people like you and me who are, people will call anti-vax crazy Christian conspiracy theorists. It's like we didn't wake up one day and just go, I'm going to freaking throw everything out the window and go crazy.
Mm-mm.
Like that's not how it happened. It was a process and
It
a
was.
progression and trying everything, right?
Yeah.
To get to the point where you realize, I tried this, I tried that, this didn't work, that didn't work. And now I'm finding what's working. And so, we can get into that. But yeah, we didn't just wake up like this.
No, it was, and I try to emphasize to people, and I'm sure that's the case for you too. I spent, oh, probably at least 8, maybe closer to, let's see, I started practicing 23. I spent close to 10 years, not quite 10 years, but towing the line. Okay. Like I haven't been a hippie all my life. Like I've done everything that they've asked me to do and exceeded the expectations and done everything by the book the way you're supposed to. Okay. I didn't start out this way. This is not a biased thing where like I've been a secretly hippie. No, like I was the guy saying, you need to go get all your childhood vaccines. That was me. I was preaching the gospel of conventional medicine for years. But then
Mhm.
gradually, I would say it started with the first time I started to feel some discomfort was like about 2 years into practice. I'm in this family practice. I'm dealing with a lot of diabetics at this place. Okay. Diabetics, hypertension, all that. Right. And we'd have pharma reps come in twice a week, bring us lunch, tell us about the newest drug, the newest diabetes drug, you know? So every day these diabetics are coming into my office and I've got, I don't know if I'm lucky, 15, 20 minutes with them. And what am I doing with every single one of them? Metformin, Januvia, uh, glipizide. Up. Oh, well, now it's worse. Okay, we're gonna put you in Farxiga. Up. We'll add some insulin. Every one of them got worse, and every one of them eventually needed more medicine. And I was like, and it felt so. What got me on this road was I felt very unsatisfied and unfulfilled. I was like, man, this sucks. Like, why? This nobody's like, but I was like, well, I guess it's just the way it is. Oh well, whatever. Wasn't until years later that I was like, oh,
Yeah.
what? Because that's what they told. Well, this is just usually this is way they're in diabetes, way it's gonna be. And there was one time where I asked a farmer rep, like, how come y'all are coming in here twice a week and you got this new drug? What about their diet? What about what they're eating? What about their exercise? Y'all ever talk about that? Or is it just about the news drug? And that,
No, it doesn't matter. That doesn't matter.
oh,
It's genetics. There's nothing they can do except take our drugs.
yeah. So that's what really started
No, I mean,
it was like
yeah,
this
go ahead.
discomfort with like this thing that was happening. And so, yeah, I didn't turn into a hippie overnight. It took a number
Right.
of years, and at each stage, I'm, like, learning something, and it's, like, kinda bothering me, but I just kinda, like, suppress it and move on, but then I learn another thing, and it bothered me, like and then they just accumulated to the point where, you know, and then when I saw I don't know if there was ever a specific straw that broke the camel's back, but, it maybe was COVID, but it was a combination of and I tried different drugs for, um 'cause I had both, like, some combination of adrenal fatigue and some depression type stuff. So I was on, like I can't remember what they put me on for fatigue. Amantadine and ranantadine for fatigue, I think. That's what if I remember right. One doctor tried a stimulant, which I hated, and then I was on, like, 1 or 2 different, like, antidepressants, which, by the way, praise the Lord, I've been off antidepressants for 5 years now, and I'm never going back. Never going
Mm,
those drugs are terrible.
amen.
Um So, yeah, and then, I remember this is where there was a straw that broke the camel's back. It was during the COVID years, and I knew I was against the COVID vaccine, but then we were still given, like, flu vaccines and stuff, and one of our nurses asked a question in our team meeting in the morning, and she said, "Hey, Doctor so and so, like, if someone's already had the flu, do we need to give 'em a flu shot?" And he's like, "Yeah, because there's 2 different strains." And I'm like, "No way, dude. You've already had the flu and you're gonna" and I was like, "Okay, I'm done. Like, I'm done." So,
Oh, yeah, it's completely ridiculous, and, I mean, pretty asinine, honestly, to the only solutions are drugs, and, oh, it's just I mean, I could go on for days, but we didn't get into this we didn't start this journey, with the intention of ending up where we are. Like most people, we just had a genuine desire to help others. And I like in my case, I knew that I could handle a lot. Like I have an emotional capacity to handle tough things
mhm,
and also gross things. Like I don't get grossed out by stuff. I
right.
don't have aversions like that. So I was like, you know what? I was actually working in a restaurant when I decided that I wanted to be a nurse because I didn't really know what to do. And I was like, skills for service and heart for service could be better used. And so that directed me towards nursing and I became a nurse. So um yeah, it's we got into this with good intentions and it is a very painful process to end up where we are now, right? Like you were talking about that sense of um kind of learning something new and really wrestling with it. And then you kind of move on to the next thing and you really wrestle with that. And it's this process of losing your religion, so to speak, right? Where
Yep.
you're breaking,
Yep.
progressively breaking out of it. And it's terrible. It sucks. Like I'm not gonna mince words. It's extremely difficult, right? Because you have created a life and a personality and all kinds of things based upon what we've been told and taught.
Mhm.
And you have friends and, you know, and to say one day, something that goes completely against the grain after you have tried and experienced things for yourself and done your research and all that kind of stuff, it's very lonely. You end up
Yeah.
on the outside of the box, right?
Oh,
So,
I had multiple friends be like, "You're crazy, you're nuts, or you're going too far, or whatever."
oh yeah, I get called crazy almost every day. Like,
Great. I love it now.
you know, yeah, I don't care at all anymore. It used to bother me quite a bit because we all have a deep desire to belong,
Mm.
right? And to be liked. And at some point, in order to get things done, you have to be willing to say what needs to be said and do what needs to be done in order to create and encourage that change that needs to occur. So that's where you and I find ourselves.
Oh, yeah. No, you're 100% right, and if people call me crazy, they call me crazy. Um,
Yeah.
Actually, now might be a good time for me to kind of bring in my own personal health journey into the middle of that, and
I was about to say, let's talk about your journey, what you tried,
yeah.
and yeah.
So, um I probably first started having issues after my hospitalization. It was like in 20 when was that? 2015, I think. Gosh, it's been 10 years. And this, I had fatigue was the biggest one. Probably had some gut issues as well, I think. Um, and definitely I'll say some mental health struggles. Totally. I'll just be upfront about that. Like just major, probably some PTSD, that kind of thing. Okay. Um, and at no point in the doctors that I saw in that time period of my life did anybody even think about anything other than physical. Like mental emotional struggles didn't even like come into conversation. Um,
Mm,
and if they did, the first thing they said was either go see a psychiatrist or take this SSRI. Like that's pretty much their response. So I had to kind of navigate that part on my own. I found a therapist, which was very helpful. And kind of did a lot of my own research on the brain and mental health and things like coping strategies and how trauma affects the brain and all that. I kind of went down that rabbit hole. That's probably a separate podcast on its own. But it's pretty fascinating on how our society just doesn't deal with trauma well. And most of us are walking around with some kind of mental health struggle because of trauma. It's like it's actually more common than people will let on. Is my what I've decided. Uh,
mm,
so, but it just and I think medicine is more probably more aware now, but they still just they try to medicate it most of the time and they don't come at it from um and there's some good brain hacks to increase your neurotransmitters and things like that. So anyway, I won't go into too much of a rabbit hole on that. So anyway, I was having I'd say fatigue was a big one. So then probably starting in about 2018 or 19 or 20, so right before COVID, I started experimenting with supplements. I would do like and I was just shooting the dark. It's like, I'll try ashwagandha. And then there was a few others. I kind of did the supplement routine. I tried some detoxes like zeolite detox and I think maybe one other one that I can't remember. Or they're not I was taking like high dose vitamin C or vitamin D or some of these different things. Now in that time I was still working. I was working a pretty heavy schedule, even I was doing 12-hour shifts, kind of all over the place. And I was just like tired a lot.
mm,
And looking back, like what I really needed was some structure to my life and um, some good nutrition. And I didn't have good nutrition. I just kind of ate out a lot. And Wasn't really looking at my diet all that closely. But I kept thinking, well, if I get the right nutrient, if I get some vitamin K or some magnesium, okay, we'll fix all this. And it didn't. I mean, I might have had a little improvement here and there, but I don't want to be a Debbie Downer to those out there that use ashwagandha. Ashwagandha is like it's not a game changer. Just gonna be honest.
No,
It's like it's not. I
no, it is not.
I experienced like maybe a tiny bit of benefit from it, but it wasn't that noticeable. Okay. So
Right.
whoever's out there hawking ashwagandha and making huge claims, stop it.
No, ashwagandha had its time in the sun, and now it's rapidly crashing. People understand that usage is very are starting to understand that
Mhm.
using it is should only be very temporary.
Mhm. Um, and then I guess what else did I do at that time? Oh, I started looking into like functional medicine type. I went and saw a functional medicine doctor. I forgot about that. And that's where I learned about things like grounding, which I think grounding's helpful, but I don't think grounding is like a cure all either. I think grounding is helpful, but it's not a cure all. Some people were claiming it was like healed every disease. And it's like, well, didn't really do that. Um, so saw a functional medicine doctor, tried a few like some functional doctor prescribing like it was some kind of nutritional powder. I don't even remember what it was. I think it was supposed to help my gut. Honestly, it didn't do much. Just being straight. Um,
Yeah.
so I think by the time I met you, I had tried a number of things, not quite everything yet, but I tried a few things, mostly individual supplements. That's most didn't really look much at macros or nutrition. I hadn't looked much at that at all. Didn't my sleep schedule was not that great either. I mean, I would stay up late on my phone, which we'll get to in a second on blue light, but I was up on my phone a lot. I was sleeping. I just not much of a routine. So then I meet Brian. I guess it was 2022, and I was hurting. And I originally came because he was working in an IV clinic, and I'd heard all this stuff about high dose IV vitamin C and these different nutrients you get in IV bags. So I'm like, all right, we're gonna go do that. So I go in. He happens to be my nurse, and I don't remember. I think I got vitamin C that day. I'm trying to remember. Um, and it gave me a boost for like a day and a half, and then I was back to where I was. And I might have come back like once, but I didn't want to pay like $200 every week to go get an IV. And so, but
Yeah. Oh,
I met Brian that day, and he was like, "Hey, I'm starting this business up. Would you want to like be one of my test clients?" And I'm like, "Sure. I got nothing else to lose. Haven't tried. Nothing's worked so far, so might as well try one more thing."
yeah.
And so I think together we went down the mineral journey. We learned about minerals, the importance of minerals. I ended up getting on some of the I can't remember the company, some of the products that we were doing at the time. But I did some of that, but
Oh, hard to, just to be specific, because I want people to know, and I want this to be a show that is about truth, right? And everything that we've tried, and not to dog on companies, but to save people time and heartache and money,
Mhm.
right? Because you spent money. So I waived my coaching fees, and I had Preston do supplements and said, all right, well, I'll waive my fees if you take these supplements. Cool. That was the agreement, and started him off. I was big into Dr. Carolyn Dean at the time,
Yeah.
and all about minerals. So she has what I think is can be a helpful line. I think she's done a good job with her supplements. But so we did the magnesium, the Pico Ionic magnesium,
Mhm.
the Relight. I think we did the B
Yep.
vitamins and even the vitamin D3K2. So we were doing almost her whole line, and there was just not much improvement. But I was convinced that magnesium was just this absolute miracle. And if you read Dr. Dean's incredible book, that I think it's called The Magnesium Miracle,
Yeah.
you will be convinced that it's all magnesium, and you'll jump the gun and go for the magnesium. So that's what we tried, right? And unfortunately, we just didn't get the results that you were looking for.
And so I think that was approximately fall of 22, I think. Um, and so I finally made the decision around that time to leave my job. So by January of 23, I had actually I had a full-time job at, we'll just say, a university. I won't say which one. Doing urgent care there. And it part of it was my body was screaming and was just pretty much tapping out. And so to do those long shifts and to be taking care of a high volume of patients and sort of a high acuity environment. Well, it wasn't high acuity, but it was more than it wasn't primary care, it wasn't emergency room, it's urgent care, it's right in the middle. But I mean, it's there's a lot of stressors to that. And because you're making important decisions. And I realized, you know, I either don't need to do this at all or I need to take a break because this isn't working. Because my body was just screaming. So I left that job. I think, and so I was doing minerals up to that point, and then I left for Virginia to do. I went and worked at a functional medicine clinic for a while there. Um,
Mhm.
and I don't remember if you and I were in contact, if we were still doing protocols at that time or not. I don't remember. Actually, I don't think we were. I think the minerals ran the course with the minerals, and then
Mhm.
I didn't really do anything for a while. I think. And what's
Didn't we
ironic,
get on Cellcore?
that was a little bit
Didn't we move over to Cellcore?
that didn't
Or was
that
it
didn't
later?
yeah, that didn't come till like the fall of 23. So by the
Okay.
spring of like fall of 22, I think we started. No, trying to remember when you started your business or when we. I think we did the minerals. I want to say like maybe December 22 into January of 23, somewhere in there. And
I think that's correct.
I did them all the way through like March of 23, and end of March
Mhm.
23. I went out to the Virginia. So in all that time, I didn't feel like I made a whole lot of progress in the minerals, and then I left for that other job. And I don't think I was doing the minerals at that point. It's really hard to remember. Um, and so I went out there. I did functional medicine. I learned a lot there. I learned about functional medicine. So what I was doing there was basically, I wasn't prescribing as many drugs anymore. Or spending more time. I was spending more time with patients, which is good. And we used probably 4 or 5 different supplement lines there. I think it was like Thorn and Pure Encapsulations and, a couple of ones I can't remember the name of, classic functional medicine supplementation lines. And so I would be basically prescribing supplements for people, and I did see some, improvement in people's health. I mean, it was better than drugs, but I wasn't seeing the kind of turnaround that I really felt that I was after. Um, and by the end of my time there, I felt like I was doing the same thing I did in conventional medicine, just with supplements instead of drugs. So I was like, I don't know, you know? And I still didn't have a good understanding of metabolic health. I still was seeing a lot of metabolic type stuff, but I didn't quite know how to attack it because
Mhm.
it seems so complex. And I came to the conclusion I don't think you can just throw a supplement at a metabolic syndrome. I don't think it's that simple. I was also seeing a lot of Lyme disease there, a lot of adrenal fatigue, and it was kind of overwhelming to even because I was still struggling with my own. In fact, my health, it really hadn't got. In fact, it got a little bit worse there, and I think it was just probably the stressor of being in a new place or something. And so it was actually a little bit worse than when I first met you. Um, and just trying to keep up with the pace and everything. So wrapped that up, came back to Texas, ended up moving to Houston, for a job there. And actually there I worked with a guy who used Rife machines, okay, to do treat patients. Um, and it was around that time I think we got back in contact, and I think maybe I started doing cell core at that time, and I made it all the way through, I think, phase 3, maybe a part of phase 4. I'm trying to remember. And I would say I did experience maybe a gradual, like, so I would say starting in August of 23 was the low point in my health. Um, I was a little bit worse because we kind of lost contact for a little while, but I was a little bit worse by that point because I really wasn't doing anything for my health at all and struggling to keep up. I couldn't even go walking for an hour without it like wiping me out for the day. Because I was trying to
Mm,
exercise and all I could do was walk. If I tried to hit the gym, I would have done. So I would go walking. I think it was at your recommendation. I would walk for no more than like 45 minutes. And that's all I could do. And it was not a fast walk. So
I remember.
I was like, man, this is low. So a testimony is I'm much better now. Am I where I want to be? No, but like much better than that. I can actually jog now. Yeah. So we started doing cell core, and I think there was some benefit from that. I don't think it's as dramatic as I was hoping, but I mean I think there was like maybe a little gradual improvement. And
Yeah.
I started dialing in my diet. So I got pretty healthy on what I was eating. Um and I was using Rife machines at the office with this guy I was working with. Um, Mostly on other people. I used him a little bit on myself. He treated me a couple times with the Rife machine, and I want to be honest about Rife machines too. For anybody that uses those or into those, I like them in the sense that they're non-invasive. They're not pharmacological. They do to a degree work with the body's frequencies. And I think there's definitely some science behind it. There's something there that's worth investigating, but they're also not a panacea.
Mm,
They had some effect on me, but like it again, it wasn't I didn't feel as that dramatic. Now, I did see other people that there was a slightly more dramatic results, on certain things. Um, there were other people who it might take them 5 or 6 sessions and then they saw results. And other people didn't experience a ton of benefit. So, mixed results as far as Rife machines are concerned, as far as what I observed. But to me, they were an improvement over supplements and an improvement over drugs. Okay. Um, and oh, there was a line of supplements that that guy was using as well, from a company called Neolife, and I did see some people there that benefited from those. So those seem to have some really solid effect. Some of their vitamins and some of their gut healing protocols seem to really work for people. So,
mm,
and I can say they worked better than what I saw in Virginia. So as far as supplements, I think that line is worth people exploring. I think that there's a lot of benefit there. But again, not a cure all. I used
yeah.
some of their supplements and I think I experienced some benefit. But again, my progress was the combination of cell core and I think the Neolife supplements, I think there was a gradual improvement. Um, and I think the new improved nutrition was helping as well. Um, I also want to give people a balanced perspective here real quick. I'm going to throw this in there. I think that everything we do, I think a lot of my health journey has been trying to figure out what's going to work for my body. But
Mhm,
as I've done all these things, like, so as they say in scientific sense, I'm an N of one. So my case,
mhm,
there might be other people that get totally better on the minerals that Brian initially tried with me when we first started. Those might work for some people. I don't know. The complicating factor that's difficult to quantify for my specific situation is I haven't had a lot of like stability in my life. I've had a couple different jobs. I've lived in a couple different cities. There hasn't really been a sustained period of stability. So there may be some emotional stress that I've been experiencing a lot of this time that makes the healing slower. And I think it's important for me to be honest about that with the listeners. Um,
absolutely.
because the
I totally
yeah. Um, and I'm working through my own spiritual journey to, as well and all those things. So that I just need to bring that to the table because it's easy to focus on the physical, but I think emotional struggles can really play into our health, and we don't always know how that's happening. It's very mysterious, but
mhm,
I'm sure it played a role in how long it's taken me to get what I'm looking for. Um,
absolutely. I think great illustration of, the I wrestle a bit with the idea of bioindividuality. I know for sure we have things that work for us, something works for me that doesn't work for you and vice versa. But at the same time, there's there's like foundational principles that work across the board because we're all 99% the same, 99.999, right?
Yeah.
So it's very difficult, and that brings what you have to be willing to bring to the table is that we're all coming from different circumstances, and honoring your story is a huge part of how to get you where you want to go. Because in my case, I was 5 years vegan, right? Like whole food, plant based vegan. And then I went through significant emotional stress working the highest stress job, one of the highest stress jobs that I can even think of. I think
Mm.
statistically it is one of the highest stress jobs is ICU nursing.
It is.
On top of some other things that were just extremely emotionally taxing, and my body got physically weak, right? So I was clearly nutrient deficient. I don't know where the listeners are in their journey, but veganism is not the answer. Like,
Mm.
veganism will make you very, very sick. Please avoid it at all costs, unless it's a temporary
Mm.
10-day cleanse or so. That's fine
Yep.
if you just need it, but it will end up biting you. So my point is, in my journey, I had a lot of physiological need because, like, for nutrients and good nutrition sustained over long periods of time to recover my body from all of that stress because I was already nutrient deficient. And then you add the emotional stress on top of that, and you're at the bottom of the tank, right? Like you got nothing left
And that's
because that's all taking away. Like the emotional stress creates a physiological demand on the body as well, right? So in my case, I needed a lot. Like I needed to do a lot to recover my body to a certain extent. And now I can rapidly decrease and have been rapidly decreasing I want to get off of supplements for the most part. Um, so that's my goal. But for the listeners, it's very important to understand your context and that what works for others may not work for you, and be willing to honor that and experiment.
yeah, that I would say the exact same thing. Like, I think everybody has to be willing to experiment with their body. Um, and in consultation with the health coach or who you want to consult with on that. But ultimately, it's your body. You have to figure out like what works for you and what doesn't. And that's
Mhm.
that's its own journey. And you kind of have to be willing to like realize that because modern medicine has given people the idea like, oh, I'm sick or I don't feel good. I need this pill. This pill fixes this thing. And dude, that is the worst paradigm that's ever been put on the American people because
Absolutely.
health is, and I mean, even me, an educated guy who understands these concepts, I still occasionally fall into that from time to time. And I have to remind myself,
Mhm.
nope, this is a journey. You're gonna have ups, you're gonna have downs. I mean, hopefully it's like the stock market, it's gradually going up and down, but overall up, right? But there's not like one pill or one thing or there's no one thing.
Right.
We're
Well, and I
way
think
too complex to that.
yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, we me and Preston are people who enjoy complexity, and now I think both have a reverence for simplicity because you start this journey, and if you're educated like us in the medical field, very tempting and easy to go down the biochemical rabbit hole, right? And oh, well, if I follow this metabolic pathway perfectly and I, do all this, it's do all these like tiny little micromanaging things, then how could I fail? Because the body is just a meat sack of chemicals, right? Like that's all that it is.
Mm-mm.
When that's clearly not all that it is. There's far more to the picture. You always have to bring to the table the mental, emotional, physical, structural, triangle of health, right? This thing that we've known traditionally for a very long time, which is not sexy, but is true, right?
Mhm.
So, and there's some important things that you said that a lot of people end up chasing, where you were working at that functional medicine clinic, you were working with the standard supplement lines,
Mhm.
like Thorne kind of stuff. So
Yeah.
you're using these higher quality, these are typically viewed as higher quality supplements,
Mhm.
and they are, but what we're missing through that lens is that they're synthetic, they're fake,
Mm.
right? So this was something that I didn't understand for a very long time either. So, I thought that you have to take we're programmed and conditioned, me and you and many people, that society at large, that dose and form matters, right? So the daily regimen according to science is 500 milligrams of vitamin C, blah 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 blah.
Mhm.
And it's like, take this one, and this one from Thorne is better because it's more pure. Well, like, okay, great. It's still fake. Like, it's not the whole food vitamin, right? And so you said yourself, people were not getting good results. I found this too. We were using the minerals that we were using are still fake and highly manipulated to be
Oh, I didn't know that.
pico ion.
I
Yeah.
oh,
So yeah, they're not food. They're they
oh,
weren't farmed.
right.
So a lab took some coal tar and refined it into a B vitamin, right? Like,
Mhm.
the very, like, you need to get to the point people need to get to the point where you can accept this simple way of thinking, which sounds maybe too simplistic, but, like, would you go lick coal tar to get your vitamins and minerals? No.
Nope.
Right? I certainly hope not, but that's kind of what people are almost doing with this Shalajeet crap.
Oh, wow.
Um, it's like
That's why.
mountain goo, mysterious mountain goo that's so good for you, right? Um, and that's my personal belief. And I personally, like, I tried Shalajeet and nothing happened. It was honestly a complete waste. So, we get our nutrition from food and the food web, right?
Mhm.
Soil, food, and then that translates into our health. So healthy soil, healthy plants, healthy animals leads to healthy humans. You cannot replicate that with synthetic nutrients. So then you got into Neolife,
Mhm.
and Neolife uses more whole food stuff.
They use
And you said you started
all their
better
stuff
results.
all their stuff is from
We,
whole food. Yeah.
there it is. So you start to get this appreciation for, like, because a whole food supplement includes all of the vitamins and minerals in a package together that your body can recognize. So it's bioavailable. So your body knows what to do with it.
Mm.
Doesn't just become expensive urine, which the synthetics are like. The reason that the synthetics are so high dose now is because that's how they force it into the cells.
Oh,
You got to get so high
yeah,
so that the cells are like, give up, you can come on in, you know?
yeah.
And that's not health either. It's practicing safe medicine. And I didn't know that for a very long time. I didn't know that. And then I got in, and when I really got my results, I was using whole food supplements from Standard Process
Yeah.
and detox supplements from Cellcore
Yep.
and herbs from MediHerb. So, and these are the pharmaceutical equivalent to supplements in standard, right?
Yeah,
Like, in
they're pharmaceutical
they're all
grade.
yeah. Yeah, exactly. So they're standardized, but we've taken the right approach. We've gone all the way back to the beginning, like, and progressed up to back to this tradition of whole food herbs first, right? And then if you really need higher doses, then we can start talking about maybe some synthetics
Mhm,
to kind of top off the engine, so to speak.
mhm.
Maybe you do need that. I don't know. But you cannot fail when you decrease the toxins effectively and you increase the nutrition. That's through diet and whole food supplements as well. And in the ideal world, you get your nutrition up, you get your toxins down. You don't need to continue supplementing forever, and you can just live your life and be human, right? And make mistakes and just live and not crash completely back down into your lowest symptoms.
Mhm.
So I just wanted to point that out because that is a great illustration of, without even knowing you were mentioning it, that getting to the whole food is key.
It's massive. It's huge. And I've tried to, in the last, let's see, this is August 23. It's been a year and a half. Yeah. Year and a half, somewhere in there. I mean, I a lot more picky about what I eat. I eat whole foods. People are like, "Oh, what do you recommend for diet?" And I break it down real simple. Well, things that come from an animal, things from a clean animal, and things that come out of the ground.
Yep.
Pretty simple. Things not in a box,
Pretty simple.
you know? Because that's what your body recognizes, You might as well do something your body recognizes. So I would say since I've started that, like I've experienced a gradual improvement. There's still some issues I'm struggling with that I want to continue to improve in, but I do think we're significantly improved from where we were when we started. Um, and I've also had to I've learned, like we said, there's no magic bullet, and I'm probably never gonna have perfect health. There should be improvement from where you're at, but you're gonna be perfect every day of every year forever. No, like you're gonna have like a couple days where okay, I'm not 100% today. I don't quite know why, and you're never gonna know why. Like, is it your magnesium? I don't know. Maybe you just had an off day, and you just have to accept some of that. You know,
Yeah.
Yes, get a routine down and get some diet stuff down, but then accept that like there's still gonna be that journey's. It's always kind of riding the wave.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. And even if like there is so much lying that happens in the online health space.
Mhm.
And sometimes, I think a lot of people probably know, right, that they're doing it. But a lot of people also have the best of intentions and just don't know any better, right? Or they've got a supplement line and they're trying to sell you their supplement line. And like, I don't have a supplement line.
Yeah,
Okay. I
yeah.
use supplement lines because they work,
Mhm.
right? And that's been confirmed by other people, other practitioners for decades when you're talking about standard process,
Mhm.
and for years with Cellcore of extreme efficacy, right? So, um, oh shoot, where was I going? What was the last thing you said?
And I just talked about the ups and downs basically, and that they're
Oh, right. Yes. So, you know, even if you get the absolute perfect protocol,
right.
you're still going to have ups and downs.
Yes.
It's not going to be just a linear line going straight up. You're going to, just like you said about that was a beautiful analogy about the stock market. It's going to be like this, but the overall trend is positive.
Mm. Yeah, and
Absolutely.
another piece too. Oh, what is my lost my train of thought there. See ups and downs. Oh, so another thing that this is something I've observed both in other patients and even myself. I do think we have to be. I try to strike a balance between two extremes. And one extreme is like I call it I'm going to call it the name it, claim it health gospel. Okay, and it's like with positive mindset, even if I'm like 85 years old, I can be amazing, right? I mean, you can be amazing in a way, but I mean, I've even noticed after 35 and really after 40, I'm 43 now, like there's changes in my body. I can't do what I did when I was 22. And
Mm,
that's okay.
that's totally okay.
You know,
Which is another reason why people should not be taking health advice from people less than 25.
Well,
because you can do whatever you want when you're that young.
that's yes, I've even wondered the thing I sent you about the fruit, I call it the fruit diet guy, the guy on Substack.
Yeah.
He doesn't look like he's any more than 28. And so,
I don't know, but
I mean, I'm speculating.
yeah, you're probably
So,
right.
I think anybody under 30 that you're taking health advice from, you should just toss it out.
Yeah, or somebody who has just generally, like, been okay. Like, I didn't I was never diagnosed with anything, but that's because I specifically avoided it. Like, I did not want a diagnosis. I did not want to attach a label
Yeah.
to what I was going through and curse myself and say, on repeat, "I have this, I have this, I have this," because that you cannot heal that way.
Ca
Um,
can we rabbit trail?
so I avo
Oh, go ahead, go ahead.
Oh, yeah, we can do whatever, but, um, that's that's the other thing that people need to consider is that has the person that you're taking advice from actually been through something that is extremely life changing, right? Like
Mhm.
where they knew something was wrong, and regardless of whether they got a diagnosis, they accomplished healing. Or did they just kind of say, I mean, losing weight is, I'm not taking anything away from losing weight and how difficult that journey can be. I'm not trying to, but it's one thing to be actually unwell and get your health back than it is to be just your kind of default relatively healthy, relatively okay, and then, do an animal-based diet and everything turns, you're suddenly a health influencer. It's like you didn't have to really do much. You just kinda had to change your nutrition. You didn't have to do all this extra stuff,
Mhm.
that people like me and you have gone through. So that's something that, people people need to take into account.
Yeah, let me I wanna yeah, I'm trying to think. There's 2 subjects I wanna address here. One is a rabbit trail about the diagnoses label. I'm gonna come back to that. But first,
Yes.
I'll finish the original thought process, which is, so I'm 43, and, um, I realize a lot of the health influencers out there, they're, like, under 30, they're promoting these products. There's a lot of money to be made in this space, and
Mhm.
that's an unfortunate thing. I'm not against people making money, so don't hear me, I'm not an anti-capitalist, but I'm saying, sorry for the light here, I'll scoot this over. Yeah. The problem is, when you're promoting all these if you're promoting a product versus being about the person in front of you, that's a problem. And I think that
And
happens so much in the health space. Um, and I also think I've noticed a lot of some of the fad dietary stuff or supplement stuff, it seems like it's always promoted by someone under 30, at best under 40, and they're promoting it to people their age. Well, I've noticed since 40, like, little changes in my body, and, like, what worked at 25 doesn't work now, so I'm trying to navigate that. And I think there's a lot of people in my boat that are, like, over a certain, let's say over 35, I don't know, just give or take. And they're being sold products and stuff by people who aren't old enough to know what it's even like to go through metabolic shifts in your body as you get older. And I'm starting to anyway, all that to say, there's an age bias in this whole space. And I don't think and I've seen this from menopausal women too. They get sold a lot of products that just flat out don't work, because weight loss for menopausal women is a lot harder. It just is. And you've got,
yeah.
um so I just feel like that needed to be said, because I if somebody's giving me advice and they're like, yeah, if they're in their 20s, I'm like, I'm not talking to you.
Yeah, like, that's great, but I'm not gonna listen to you.
No, it's absurd, because they could take a supplement and feel great, and it's because they're 27 years old. It's not because of the supplement. It's because
Right.
they can do whatever they want to their body and wake up the next morning, and they can drink 5 alcoholic drinks one night and get up and go to work the next morning. I drink 5 alcoholic drinks, I'm out, man.
Right.
Um,
Amen.
so I think there needs to be I actually think in the health space, the health coaching space, there needs to be a healthy discussion about if someone's over a certain age, you need to be a lot more nuanced and understanding of how you approach them because their body's not going to respond like a 27-year-old. I mean, if a 27-year-old comes to me and needs help with their health, man, I'm going to basically say, well, let's fix your nutrition, get you to sleep right. That'll probably do it right there. But if you're
Yeah.
50 years old, diet alone, you might need there might be some additional things you're gonna need more time. I mean, even working
Yeah.
out, hey, it's my working out and recovery time is harder now, you know?
Mhm.
Or my recovery
Mhm.
time is a little bit longer now for working out. I work out differently now than I did at 25, very differently.
Yeah. And, I'm 30, just turned 30 in October, so it's not like I'm creaking and aching everywhere, although I was when I was unwell. So I know what it feels like to be an old man because I was literally that was one of the things I would say. I would say, like, I feel like an old man. Like, why I can barely get up out of bed. Every single joint in my body hurts. I can't work out. I have no muscular strength. I'm completely fatigued. If I try to work out, I have to take a nap afterwards. Like, that's not normal, right? Like that. And so that was from 25 to just about recently was
Oh, wow.
still struggling. And there's still some things that I would love to kind of like just tweak, and you can tweak for the rest of your life, but to get over that big hurdle and that big hump is almost like a rite of passage, right? It's like
Mhm.
you got to be initiated through that process. But I think that it's absolutely valid to bring to the table the idea that there's difference when it comes to age. There's difference in genetics, although a lot of the genetic conversation is ignoring the foundational principles that need to be discussed.
Mhm.
So, we need there's a lot to bring to the table here, but ultimately we got to get back to that foundation. So, you know, um, age matters, genetics matters, but nutrient loads matter
Mhm.
and needs matter and toxic burden matters,
Yep.
right? Your gut health matters. So if you've been trashing your body, so you're just over 10 years older than me, you've had 10 years or more, you've had 13 years specifically to uh, trash your body more than I have,
Yes.
right?
Correct.
So it's going to take you a little bit longer
Yep.
than it did me.
Yep.
And that's okay. Like, and just being able to say that's okay is a huge part of the journey of like not expecting everybody has been programmed and conditioned and advertised to
Mhm.
that you can fix everything in 90 days, right? Or just take Ozempic and,
Oh.
everything. Don't even we'll save that for another
Oh.
time. No, oh man, it's hard. It's so hard. What I think the message that we're trying to give to people here is that, what you're going through is valid. There are answers. You have to open your mind to some things that you probably think are nonsense. And until you open your mind to that, like for me, in my case, I didn't think parasites were a thing. I learned about parasites in my extended education and becoming an integrative health practitioner and getting into functional medicine. But I was like, I think that's overblown. It's probably not. It's not. I was just not convinced. Turns out that was exactly what I needed to focus on, and that I had a huge parasite load that I needed to get rid of and cleanse. Right. So I did that with herbs, and it changed my life. Like, so for 5 years of struggle, I could have resolved it in probably 3 months or less just by focusing on the right things.
Yep.
So, how many times is it that we're just getting in our own way because of our preconceived notions about what's real, what's nonsense, and that whole mess?
Dude, totally. I mean, yes, it's hard because you've got like I did a couple detoxes early on in my journey, but that was the wrong thing to do. because my nutrition was real. I was very nutritionally depleted. And
Mm,
I'm sitting there trying to detox when I'm already in it. Like, no, like I need to like build up my nutrition and then maybe detox at some point, you know?
yes.
Um, and I think there's a whole industry around detox, and I think detoxes can be helpful, but not if you're in major adrenal fatigue.
Yeah. It's as simple as if the body is weak, you should not be venturing down energetically taxing things.
Mhm.
Like, if you have no energy, it's not time to ask your body to use more energy to get rid of toxins, right? So, you know, uh, there's so much I could say. I just want to give. It's like I want to just go here. It is. Like I'm just gonna give it to you. Here it is, and I will like over time. But that could take multiple. That will take years of episodes probably to get it all out.
Yeah.
Um, but you nailed it. You have to increase the strength of the body.
Mhm.
And so, we both did cell core. We both got decent to good results from cell core. I love cell core.
Mhm.
Putting the pieces together of both sides of detoxification and supporting the nutrition and really getting down to and listening to what your body is ready for is absolutely key. Because when I started, I didn't know about standard process. I jumped over to cell core and really appreciated the philosophy that they were talking about, right? I was like, this makes total sense. If your house is dirty, you need to clean it,
Yep.
right? Like, or things are just not going to function well. That's as simple. That's like if you don't want to get complex, that's as simple as you need to keep it to create that understanding. But it takes energy to clean your house, so to speak. And energy is nutrients ultimately,
That's right.
or nutrients contribute to the energetic production, right? So it's taxing. So we both did it. I actually went too hard, not too hard, too fast, but my body wasn't ready because I was so weak. So it actually made things kind of worse for a good period of time. And I was baffled. I was like, this doesn't make any sense because the philosophy I agree with, and it makes perfect sense to clean your house and everything will resolve. I needed that nutrition piece, right? And not just from diet alone, but from some extra targeted supplements,
Mm.
whole food nutritional supplements,
Right.
herbs, things to support organ systems.
Yep.
And that's when, boom, after 1 month of that, I had my healing, right?
Wow.
So, and we can talk about that um, another episode. But so yeah, you have to make the body strong first. Then you can start to remove those toxins because, you know, I've been getting rid of just kind of knocking out the parasites recently. And once I made my body strong, I started to have some symptoms and I was like, "Oh, I'm ready to really knock this out." Like I can feel it. Like my body is telling me like, "Get this crap out." And so I can tolerate higher doses because my body's strong and my body's like ready to take what it needs and do what it needs to do because it has the energy to do it.
Mhm. Um, I wanted to come back. We can keep going on that if you want, but I wanted to come back to something you brought up just a little bit ago about diagnosing and labels. Can we go there for a second?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So it took me a long time to figure this out because when I was early in my career, I didn't even see it because I was so brainwashed by a medical system, right? It didn't even occur to me. But after COVID and in my journey since, I started to come to the same conclusion you came to. So if I ever go see a doctor again, and I don't know if I will, But if I were, and they gave me a diagnosis, I would say, thank you for your opinion, you know? But I would never walk in a doctor's service and say, I have blank. I am a diabetic. Okay. Or I have like, for example, I have something right now. I word it like this. Like I have symptoms right now that are consistent with high blood pressure. That's how I say it. But I don't have it. Okay. Because what I noticed in medicine over a number of years, people would come in and they had taken on an identity that a doctor had given them. So when they say you have cancer, you have diabetes, you have heart disease, suddenly that person's like, oh, I mean, you can see the countenance drop. They're like, oh, and they accept it. They accept that label.
Yeah.
And if they're not careful over time, that label becomes a part of them and it is now theirs. And it almost feels like a spiritual thing. Now,
Mm.
I want to be balanced here. Okay. There's two extremes you can get on, and I don't want to be on either side of this. Okay. One extreme is
Sure.
one of the extremes is one I just mentioned, where it's like, well, every disease is because you claim it, and if you just renounce it, then you won't have the disease. Well, that's nonsense. That's dumb. That's really dumb.
That's like praying over your junk food.
Yes, exactly.
Like, Lord, may this pizza bless my body.
Right.
No.
No. God's like, no, I'm not doing that. Um, but so that's one extreme. Um, but the other extreme is that we all over identify with our diseases and ailments and they're just so a part of us and you just do what the doctor says, you know? And very careful now with patients. Like when I interact with patients, I don't really give them a diagnosis anymore, not in the same way. I will describe their symptoms. I will give them some ideas of what the root causes probably are and how we're going to address that.
Mm.
But I will tell them directly. I said, I'm not speaking death or disease over you. I want to speak life over you. I tell them that
Oh yeah, that's amazing.
because so many, well, I'm going to save that rabbit trail for in a second, but I'm going to finish this rabbit trail first. So those are the two extremes. And I think the truth is somewhere in the middle. We are physical beings. We do experience symptoms in our body. We do, whether that's a headache or a fever or whatever. And you have to kind of acknowledge that those things are happening in your body. They are happening, but they
Mm.
are not who you are. They are not permanent and they are not an identity.
Absolutely.
And I think the medical profession has screwed this up entirely because they label people, even mental illness. That's another one. I mean, if you expect someone to be depressed, then they're going to be depressed. You know,
Mhm.
if you begin labeling people with these labels, right? And doctors, unfortunately, they see people through labels. They don't see people as human beings. I've yet to see a doctor see someone as a human being. Haven't seen it yet.
Mm.
Just being
Yeah.
honest. Okay.
Yep.
Well, a conventionally trained one anyway. Okay.
Yeah.
Um, and so they think of people in terms of disease states and how they're going to treat that disease. And I just think that's like something's not right about that.
Mm.
So, something is dehumanizing
Completely.
about that, you know? And so I've tried to strike this middle balance of like, because for example, like if I break my femur and the bone is sticking out of the skin, the I'll call it the medical miracle gospel people are like, well, just believe that your leg's not broken. Um, no, you need to go see an orthopedic surgeon now.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So, you know, either side, both sides are wrong. And we need to have a healthy discussion in the middle. That second rabbit trail that I wanted to go down, I'll bring back in here. I think there's a spiritual aspect to what's going on
Mm.
because I've noticed this in almost every medical setting I've been in, not every single one because the natural ones aren't like this, but like all the conventional settings I've been are like this. There seems to be the the mindset of the profession that then infects the patients is a type of fear and control. Because the patient goes in and the doctor's like, you might have cancer, you might have this, or you do have this, or whatever. And I've seen patients' faces, their faces, like their whole countenance changes when the doctor utters those words. It's almost as if the doctors are the last remaining priests of our society that are making like these declarations over people's bodies, and they're just like, and they just accept it, right? They're accepting the words of authority from someone with the white coat, and it's almost like a spell comes over them. They're like, "Oh, well, yeah, oh, I've got to do the chemo. Well, I've got to do that. Oh, I've got to do, oh my God, like it's just, there's something so wrong about it that I don't know how to describe it, but that's the only way I know to describe it."
I think you're describing it exactly as it is. Like, that's what it is.
And it's always,
And it sounds nuts,
yeah,
right? Like, it sounds nuts to say that. And so let's establish that we agree that there is value in dia diagnosticians,
yes.
right? And especially, when in the time that it's needed, like if you're in a life-threatening situation, that is where conventional medicine shines.
Shines.
I still think we have enough problems with that alone, like trauma medicine, right? Like, if we could give up the rest of the chronic disease stuff that happens, all the management of the diabetes, if the hospitals would surrender that to health coaches and people focused on that,
Mhm.
we would get better outcomes, people would be healthier and happier, but we would also make a whole ton of progress by focusing on emergency and trauma medicine, where we could just explore all kinds of things and all of the energy could be devoted to that kind of stuff where, we have tons of car crashes. We have, there's all kinds of things and ways we could improve. So, you know, that would be my ultimate scenario where the chronic disease, chronic conditions, all of that stuff, I hesitate to even say disease, but the chronic conditions becomes responsibility of
Yeah.
those who are actually going to help you heal. And then the emergency stuff goes to the people who are qualified to do emergency stuff.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, emergency medicine is a great advancement of the 20th century. We learned it on the battlefield in the wars. We brought it into the ERs, and the ER is a great place if you're shot, stabbed, broken bone, anaphylaxis. Please, absolutely. I salute the ER docs. Thank you for the work you do. Even though,
Amen.
even though 70% of what you have to do is, kind of BS primary care stuff, and you don't get to do the emergency stuff, you're trained. I salute you. You guys are fantastic. Um,
Yeah.
but all my primary care brethren out there, they're still prescribing statins for high cholesterol. I rebuke you. Oh, well,
Yeah, absolutely.
we should do a whole separate podcast on cholesterol. That's another one of my soapboxes. Um,
Oh, I'd love to.
but so yeah, that spiritual dynamic is what and I noticed that in COVID because like the powers that be, the people at the top, they were like, well, we're going to mask up. We're going to 6 feet. We're going to give you a vaccine. And it's like, everybody just did it. And I was like, what just happened? Like, it's like this, it felt like it felt like a spell. Like they cast this, like they spoke these words and everybody was just like, their brains shut off. And they're like, yes, we will obey. It's like,
Mhm.
whoa, scary.
Oh, yeah, it was wild. It was very, uh, anxiety provoking to be witnessing it firsthand, right? Like, to feel like I'm way over here, and there's a person right next like, another nurse right next to me, and they're having a conversation, you know, pro all of these interventions that Fauci made up
Mhm.
and how important it is and all this stuff. And I'm just like, I really struggled. I would sit there like, am I crazy? Like, what is happening right now? It was very disheartening and very, uh, uh, what's it called? Like mental anguish right? Like, just caused a lot of emotional pull on both sides. I was like, I don't know what the right answer is, but I'm convinced that you're wrong, or that you're not fully correct, and you're not looking at this perspective. And it was all just a mess.
Yeah. I mean, it just, and I think the other thing I would love to, the message I would like to get across to some of your listeners is, I think part of what we have to do in our nation with this help, I think we have to take back the power of the individual. And what I mean by that is everybody I know, when they go to like their plumber or mechanic or whatever, like people are sensible enough. Like if the plumber comes in, he's like, well, you need to fix your whole house and it's going to be $20,000. And the person's like, well, I'm going to get a second opinion. Thank you. Right. And your mechanic, and I use this analogy, if you go to a mechanic and every 6 months something on your car is breaking or it's not fully fixed and they have to fix it again, like, do you keep going back to the same mechanic? Like, no, people don't. But when people go to their
Right.
doctors, they shut their brain off. They expect him to do all the thinking for them. They cede their autonomy over to him. And then when they don't get better, they keep going back. And I'm like, this is madness. And so there needs to be like a shift in paradigm, because the paradigm up until this point has been, you're the little dweeb citizen we don't care about. You're going to come to the white coats and we're going to tell you what to do and you're going to do it. And that's just the way it is. And everybody just did it. That needs to change. It needs to be patients going, nope, I'm not the customer. I'm the boss. You're just my,
Yeah.
you're a consultant for me. And if I don't like you, I'm going to another guy.
Hmm.
And there needs to be a power balance shift that needs to happen. A mentality shift needs to happen where people take control of their health and they're willing to take ownership over their choices and then have I call it a consultant, which happens to have medical training help them.
Yes. And you're absolutely correct. And, to expand on it, it's a diagnosis is the most disempowering thing,
Mm-hmm.
as in my view, right? Like, you nailed it. That's exactly what it is. The countenance lowers, all the power is taken away because they give all the power to the priest of the medical system,
Mm-hmm.
right? Mr. Authority who holds his life in your hands. And it's like, unless you're dying, he doesn't hold his life in your hands.
Right.
Let's get one thing clear. Like, if you can turn the boat around, you can turn the boat around. Like, I don't submit to the idea that, it's too late.
Right.
I think I don't have all the answers.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying I do, but I will not submit to that until I know, like, there is a too late. There is, and I've experienced it personally, um, with my dog who I lost last year. So, and I tried the stuff I tried, but there was a certain point that I couldn't do anything,
Mm-hmm.
and I just had to accept that. But she was like struggling to breathe, had rampant cancer, and she couldn't breathe. Like, so she wasn't eating. She refused to eat. So that was like, we're talking about general principles of health here. I know obviously a dog is different than a human, but when you get to the general principles of good nutrition and nutrient status and getting toxins out, it's very applicable, broadly applicable across species. It's kind of the same thing. So, um, there is too late, but it's so often, people are 45, 50 years old, um, even younger nowadays, getting a diabetes diagnosis, and that's it. Boom, that's it. You have type 2 diabetes, even though that's completely preventable and reversible through diet and lifestyle and herbs and all the stuff. It's like, this is who you are now, and this is who you will be regardless of what you do. So right there, that statement is, I'm taking all the power away from you.
Right. Exactly.
And it's evil.
It's a victimizer victim dual relationship.
Yes.
The doctor's the victimizer, and then the patient takes on the role of the victim. They're both false self. They're both false identities in both of them. And then they work together for a false outcome.
You said it.
Because the doc,
You said it.
because the doctors themselves, I realize this too. I've met so many medical professionals that I could tell, like they're they're just kind of robotic drones. Like somewhere along the way, they lost themselves. I don't know when or how, but they did. And now they're just
Mhm.
following orders from on high. So in some ways, the doctors are victims too, because they've been co-opted. Like this gets into my own philosophy, but I think the doctors they're usually very smart people. They're very intelligent. So they go to these schools,
Absolutely.
and the schools brainwash them with this education, and then they lose themselves in the process. So they're kind of stuck too. And they're victimizers and victims all at the same time. And then the patients,
Absolutely.
I mean, saying like, I saw so many doctors and I was like, man, they look dead on the inside. I think they're alive.
Yeah. It speaks to the soulless nature of the system
It's
that,
very
you know,
soulless.
yes, and it is the system. It's not the individuals in my experience. It's
No,
very easy to get conspiratorial and say all doctors bad, but ultimately I have not seen a person with bad intentions. I've seen, advanced practice professionals who have shocked me with a few things that they've done, right? And have very very much upset me,
yep,
but they are intelligent. They can do things that I cannot. I'm not going to sit here and pretend that I'm able to do all the things that a doctor can do, right? Um, and there's ways that they think that sometimes I didn't think of in the hospital setting, right? Because it's a different way of thinking. Um, but it just has ultimately nothing to do with health and everything to do with disease management, right?
it's disease
And that's
management.
ultimately what you're supposed to do is you manage. You're a manager, which is it. Like that's I mean, how many managers in different settings look soulless and depleted because managing sucks, right? Like management by definition when it comes to health kind of suggests that um there's no improvement,
Correct.
right?
It
Like
is right. It assumes that you're going to have that forever and we're just going to manage it. And I
yes.
mean, they called it that in school. They called it chronic disease management. That's the term they use. And I hated that. I remember early in practice, before I had my awakening, I still was frustrated because I was like, why are we just managing this shit? Sorry, excuse my,
Right.
why are we managing this stuff? I was like, we're not supposed to be managing. You're supposed to be healing these people. What the heck?
Yeah. Yeah, where's the healing?
Hmm.
Exactly.
So,
And I think, people just completely underestimate the power of food and nutrition.
oh,
I mean, you are literally changing your your makeup, your cellular makeup. You're making new cells with new nutrients. You have new RBCs every 90 to 120 days. So, are you made of Skittles and Oreos and, Big Macs? Or are you made of steak and wild caught salmon and shrimp and fruit and vegetables? And it's that simple
yep,
thing right there.
yep.
It's like if you can get that through your head, you can do anything.
I agree. I mean, think about this, like the billions of dollars, maybe trillions, but at least billions, tens of billions of dollars that have been put into big pharma and all the research and all this stuff. What if that same amount of money was used to start multiple organic farms in all 50 states, in all different communities to supply that community with organic fruits and vegetables?
Right.
I mean, like it's a head scratcher. Like, okay, we spent $50 billion over the last, say, 15 years on all these drugs. how much organic food could you purchase for $50 billion?
Enough to feed at least the United States. I mean,
You could feed the whole
I
United
don't know.
States. Yeah, you could feed everybody.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And when you're talking about, you made a good point with um doctors and the the soullessness, right? And how do they get there? And being still working in the hospital, I can see it and I've felt it at times. So I think I can speak to it where depending on your practice setting, like it's different for ICU versus floor nursing versus private practice. But you see the same thing day in and day out, and you have 10 minutes to talk to somebody,
Mhm.
and you can't answer their questions that you need to answer. You don't have the nutrition education to be able to answer those questions.
Mm.
Um, and people, to an extent, there's the type of person who's just going to continue doing what they're going to do, and they don't care what you have to say.
Mhm.
And unfortunately, that is the personality type that tends to end up inside the system
Yeah.
more often than not,
Yep.
right? Where it's like, I'm going to trash myself and I'm going to do whatever I want and you're going to fix me, you know? And, maybe they're compliant with the care that is provided and the plan that is provided to them, but they're not going to give up their cigarettes or alcohol or, and those play a huge role and people don't even talk about that stuff. I mean, to an extent, it's kind of so obvious that maybe we don't even need to touch on it, but um, it's that right there that you see the same thing every day. You try your hardest and you just get defeated. And at some point, you give up and you acquiesce to the system.
Yeah.
And I've had those thoughts. I've had those thoughts where I'm like, does everybody else know something that I don't? Like, has everybody just accepted that this is the way it is? And is there wisdom in that? I don't know. Possibly.
I th-
But ultimately, like, I'm not going to give up because God gave me a gift of becoming unwell, and the journey to getting well again has been something that I've learned so much through the process that I would not, if I could go back and do it over, I would choose to do it again.
oh, wow. I can say something similar about some of the stuff I've been through. It's like I feel like it's grown me so much as a human being. And I want to touch on what you said about the doctors. I want to be fair and balanced here, to use a quote from Fox News. Am I against the system? Yes, I am. Am I against the doctor themselves? Not completely. I think a lot of them have good intentions. I do believe they've been misled, but a lot of doctors I've met have good intentions, and you can tell like they want to help. They've just been educated in a model that really doesn't teach them how to. So I'm not going to sit here and slander every doctor out there. Now there are some bad ones. Um,
Oh yeah.
but so I want to be balanced and say, if you're a doctor out there listening, if you're an MD out there listening to this, I don't hate you. You're God's child, like the rest of us. Um, but you might want to examine the educational model that you were taught under and just ask some questions, because the educational model does not encourage asking questions. I wasn't allowed to ask any questions about, where did y'all make these vaccines that you're like, for example, that's a great example. When they taught us about vaccines, they didn't even teach us about them. They said, here's the vaccine schedule, memorize it.
Yep. Same for us.
Like, don't ask questions, you know? So the educational model doesn't really allow you to ask questions. You can't even, I mean, when they teach about pathophys and they teach you about the diagnosis and what to prescribe, no one even in the school I was at, no one thought to ask, wait, but why do they have rheumatoid arthritis? Like, where did that come from? And why are we using that drug that has all these side effects? Like, is there like no one asks that? You just do it
Mhm.
because that's the educational model, and that's by design. So that would be my message to MDs out there. I don't hate you. You probably got in this for good reasons, and you're probably trying to do the best you can to keep your head above water. But please start asking questions.
I completely second that. I definitely don't hate the docs. I think that, when they're needed and they shine and they do God's work in the moments that He needs it to be done. And there's some incredible things that I've seen done. Um, and there's some not, So, yeah, ask questions, be curious. Um, Try to do something more than where you currently are, right? And this goes for doctors, and I think this goes for every person. Like, no one is coming to save us. A doctor could save your life in one circumstance, right? But you only needed him once. In the rest of your journey, there's no one coming to save you.
Thank,
You have to
thank you.
choose to do it. Yeah. You have to choose to do the work. You have to make the choice every single day to a point, because now it doesn't even feel like a choice to me. It's just how I live,
Mhm.
right? Like, and that's why people say it's a lifestyle, and it's like, it's so played out. It's like, okay, what does that even mean anymore? Well, what it means is that you have systems set up, you've done your research, you have a certain way of thinking about things, and you have a way of prioritizing things that now and you put it into practice to the point where you don't have to think about it anymore.
Yep.
And you will reach a certain point in your journey where you achieve that health. And now you're so healthy, you don't even want the crap because you don't want to go back
Mhm.
to where you were, and you value your health too much.
Yeah, I think you get to a point where, like, I don't want to eat the junk anymore. It's just like, whoa, I know what that does to me. Like, you get to a point where living healthily, it's a mindset, it's a lifestyle. It's just part of your regular sort of being, and you don't even identify with the other stuff anymore. It's that you're like, no, why would I ever do that? You know?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, it's a great place to get to, but it's a very difficult place to get to. And it's always good to remember where people are at, where I was at, right? Like,
Mhm.
to reach back mentally to kind of the worst of the worst and recognize that that's where others are right now. So how can we help them get out of that, get over that hump, get back to the health and the healing that we know is possible and we can absolutely help with. But at the end of the day, it is going to be your choice. And it is going to be, do you show up and do the consistent thing over and over and over again? Because there's no magic pill, there's no one coming to save you.
Mm.
You have to just do it.
I think that's the biggest thing is, and that no one's coming to save you kind of dovetails with what I was saying about we've got to have a mind like a power dynamic shift, or people have to shift their mindset because the American public kind of carries around a little bit of a victim mindset in terms of, well, the medical profession, the doctor's going to save me. They'll fix me. Their pills are going to
Yeah.
fix me. And dude, that is like, I hate to say it, that's a victim mindset. It really is. Or maybe it's a slave mindset. You know, you're not taking
Hmm.
ownership, you're not taking responsibility, you're not doing what you can, you're not doing any of those things. And
Yeah.
and it leads to being in bondage to that system. That's what it leads to. So, and I don't think God ever intended for it to be like this. This is not God's design. I can tell you that.
No, 100%. Um, Absolutely not. Uh, it is not normal to be this sick as a society.
No.
We are the sickest society in the world. We spend the most, if healthcare worked, we spend the most. Why do we spend the most on healthcare and have the worst outcomes?
Yeah.
Explain that right there.
Yeah.
Like it is really that simple. Now there are, the 5% of conditions that need drugs and surgery, and that includes the trauma care. The rest of it, you need to decide that it's not my genetics. I'm not going to be a victim.
Mhm.
My dad has asthma. Why don't I have asthma? Like,
Mm.
um, not that asthma is strictly genetic, but I could choose to. I probably have a genetic propensity to develop asthma if I were to smoke cigarettes, eat like crap, and all of that stuff. I would probably develop asthma, right? Because I probably have a predisposition. So we all have our genetic predispositions. We have these frameworks and structures that, one person gets cancer, one person gets ALS, one person gets RA, one person gets heart disease. But what we're seeing to a ridiculous extent, and what I see every single day is cardiopulmonary disease, right? So
Mhm.
coronary artery disease,
Yep.
congestive heart failure, type 2 diabetes,
Mhm.
COPD, asthma, you know, those are HLD, hyperlipidemia, so high cholesterol, which
Mhm.
that needs a whole episode to talk about,
Oh,
right?
we're gonna talk
Because
about that one. Yeah.
the standards of that are just completely ridiculous. So yeah, I mean, you're struggling and you're suffering. For those who are listening, you're struggling and your suffering is real. And I am in no way trying to dismiss what you're going through if you're going through something. But what I am saying is that you have the power to make that change.
100%. And I think part of my journey that's helped is actually believing that I could get better. I think when that spine shift happened, I don't know when it happened, but when I first met you, like with the minerals and stuff, I was struggling to believe that I could get better. It wasn't until I think when we started the cell core, maybe, I don't know, somewhere around the time, I was like, this is gonna happen. And I was like, I'm doing whatever it takes. I will spend whatever money I gotta spend, do whatever gymnastics I gotta do. We're doing this.
Oh yeah, because you were also considering a hormone therapy for a while, right?
I was
And so,
gonna
I mean,
yeah,
that's a big.
I was gonna do like TRT because I think my testosterone was I don't know what it is now, but I know it was low at the time. And I was like, but that's a whole other conversation about potential side effects and stuff. But I was like, no, like I can do a good enough job. Like, yeah, I'm not gonna get my testosterone to 1300 like those guys do. But man, I can do some stuff to improve this. Like we can figure something out.
Absolutely. And that's where we're so aligned. And like people talk about the natural fallacy, right? Where just because it's natural doesn't mean it's better. Well, I don't care anymore. I completely believe that. Natural is better,
Mhm.
and you should pursue every single natural thing that you can possibly do. And don't come at me about like poison ivy and oh, God made poison ivy and it's not good. Well, yeah, no shit. Like
That
that's
what?
not what I'm talking about.
No. Yeah, I
Um,
know what you mean.
like let's use some common sense here, right? Like let's get back to the tradition of eating real food, something we've done for as long as we've existed.
Mhm.
And let's do everything we possibly can naturally before we dive into hormones and peptides and like that's not my thing. I'm not going to if you're looking for that and you're listening, you're in the wrong place. Go find somebody else.
Yep.
We're talking nutrition, we're talking herbs, We're talking energy. That's not super woo woo, but we're just talking natural thing, like natural strategies that ultimately result in real lasting health, robust health, energy, vitality, all of the things throughout your health, throughout your lifespan, and pushing your health span as far as you can. The years that you're healthy, pushing it as far as you can. Like my ideal is being 95 or something or other years old and going to sleep and not waking up one night.
Mhm. Amen.
That's how I want to go. I don't want to go with intubation and surgery. And, these are the things that I see every single day. And I don't want others to have to go through that.
No,
So that's where all of this comes from. And I think that you're on the same page.
I am. I mean, that's a whole nother conversation is I call it the commercialization of birth and death. People used to be born and die at home, and now it's all done in a freaking hospital.
Yep.
You know why? Money.
Ye-
The medical
Amen. bro.
medical system is based on money. It's about it's a business model for profit, not about healing, and it never has been. I mean,
Correct.
prior to Rockefeller, I think it was more about healing, the chiropractors, the naturopaths, the homeopaths, right? But modern
Yes.
medicine, from the time Rockefeller got it going all the way to the present day, it is about profit. It is not about healing, and it never was about healing. I learned zero things about healing and how to really heal in school. I'm just be honest. School didn't teach me to heal. Taught me to diagnose and prescribe. That's what they teach you.
Yep. It taught me how not to kill people with drugs.
That's correct. Yeah, it's like how not to kill people.
Yeah.
That's correct.
Yeah.
And so like going back to kind of the spiritual piece, like there is something spiritual about the system. For those who are listening, I don't know what your religious beliefs are, and if this isn't for you, that's okay. But this system, to me, the fruit of this system is disease and death. And all I know is disease and death do not come from God.
Correct.
God was not the author of death and disease. It wasn't him. So if that's the fruit of the system, draw your own conclusions of where that system comes from.
That, yeah, that's perfect right there. That's a great place to leave off the main conversation. So, to kind of wrap this up, I want to ask you, if you could say just one or two impactful things to someone sitting right in front of you, someone who's going through the things right now that you've gone through, what would you say to them? Where would you lead them? How would you guide them?
Oh man.
Putting you on the spot.
So number one is go with your instincts and your gut. Because if your gut and your
Mm,
instincts are telling you something's not right in your body, then something's not right.
mm.
Don't let a doctor talk you out of it with, oh, but your labs look normal. Okay.
We'll have to do a whole episode on that.
Yes. That's another episode. We've got a few lined up here. Um,
Oh, yeah.
so that's number one. Number two, and I can speak from my own mistake in this area, like try to hold on to hope and like positivity. Like try to like believe. And even if it's like hard to believe, write it down. Like write down a belief statement. Like I believe that I can get better, that this can be better. And if it takes 6 months, if it takes 2 years, whatever it takes, or in Brian's case, 4 to 5 years, whatever, right? Um, hold on to that hope no matter what. And be willing to go through the ups and downs. And there is trial and there is error. And you're not going to get it,
Mm,
not going to get it right. The first supplement, the first diet, the first whatever.
no. Keep going. Absolutely.
Mhm.
I can't I can't remember. I mean, I don't know how many times I was this close to giving up
Oh,
and
yes. I've
thinking,
wanted to give
"Oh,
up on several occasions.
yeah." And thinking, "All right, this is how I'm gonna feel for the rest of my life."
Mhm.
And, but you go to sleep and you wake up and you say, no, as long as you get good sleep, right? Like if
No,
you,
yeah,
it's
exactly.
much more helpful to get good sleep. But well, ladies and gentlemen, Preston Gorman, thank you so much for joining me today. And I look forward to having you on future episodes.
I'm excited. This is great.
All right. And thank you guys for listening. And we'll see you on the next episode of Fix My Fatigue.